Hi, and welcome back. I know the name of this video is a little bit jarring, but the reason for it is honestly quite simple. I wanted to talk about something that I started to notice because of my life after cancer, and that thing is basically just noticing how a lot of people think that there is a certain level of maybe not privilege but certain opportunities that you can get if you have some kind of experience. There is a common turn of phrase, blank card. It could be sexuality card, race card. Sometimes what I've heard is cancer card, when you're using some kind of identity or your experience or who you are, whatever, to get something, which I find to be quite a strange thing to discuss with people, because in my experience, before and after treatment, I have definitely received less opportunities after I completed treatment, which doesn't quite make sense because I was getting opportunities because of my following before treatment, where I honestly probably had like 8 to 10K when I was getting like a lot of interviews for different types of jobs in video producing and stuff like that. And then now at like 88K, I get less opportunities because I have to explain the gap in my resume. And I was kind of wondering about whether this was just my experience and that's it, or if other people also encountered it. So I looked it up, and turns out that unfortunately, statistically speaking, a lot of people, a lot of young adults and adolescents who get cancer have a later development in their careers because of the setbacks. Not just a setback in terms of time that it takes to go through treatment, but it turns out that a lot of people get less opportunities if they even mention that they've been sick before, let alone if they're sick currently. So this kind of started this whole thing for me, where I started to notice a lot of issues in terms of disability accommodations. And I want to explain the situation as clearly as I can to make sure that I'm not, putting the wrong image out there in terms of people thinking that I want to claim disability or something like that. But I have had cancer, and it's been 2 years since I finished treatment. I can't remember exactly, but I think it's like 2 years or so. I have definitely experienced a shift in terms of people's perceptions and other things like that, which is something that is concerning, because I'm one of the few lucky people who got to go through this horrible experience but had the opportunity to actually get better. And I also got lucky because I got one of the treatable cancers, and one of the only cancers that can be considered cured after you haven't had a relapse for about 2 years after diagnosis. So I know for a fact that employers and places that I apply to for not employment but other opportunities, they have no excuse to dismiss me due to not being able to complete tasks. Keep in mind that I do believe that there should be more accommodations and there should be a lot more work done right now, not in the future, but seriously, like, it needs to be fixed now when it comes to reintegration after getting a disability, or if you grew up with disability, whatever it is, to make it easier for people to function on their own instead of, having to run into issues all the time with peers and with employers and stuff like that. However, I am one of those examples where we can clearly see that people don't even get a fair chance to get assessed in terms of whether they can take care of a particular job or anything like that, because I'm back to the same as I was before, which puts me in this unique situation where I can see this shift and how unfair it is, while at the same time I have the energy to do something about it, and I want to do something about it because it is absolutely ridiculous that this is even an issue. I honestly don't understand how we build society around greed and profit so much that we cannot fathom people being people and having bodies and being, sick or anything along those lines. The fact that we went through a pandemic of this magnitude and we're back to people going to work when they're sick without wearing a mask, it's really interesting to witness. Maybe interesting is not the right word. It's disheartening, honestly, and it's just annoying. Like, how dumb can we be to continue this bullshit, to just return to it as if we didn't learn a single fucking thing? You know what I mean? So when I found some information about the fact that this is statistically an issue, I'm going to be speaking specifically from my experience or from experience of people who were young when they got cancer and survived it. So young survivors. Obviously, this isn't going to cover even a fraction of everyone who, in this conversation of disability and reintegration or integration into workplaces and stuff like that. This is a very, very huge issue. You cannot just cover it in one video. So I'm going to cover specific avenues of it that I understand well, and then we'll talk about it at the end, what we can, discuss further. There's more and more survivors of cancer every single year because we find out new ways of treating cancer and we find better ways of treating cancer, which means that people oftentimes live longer after treatment and some don't develop secondary cancers, etc., etc. Because of all this information, because it's already something that's being studied, there's a few studies that have been released specifically focusing on finances and employment in young people. The one that I found was a Danish research paper that kind of combined a bunch of other papers and talked about the numbers. And what they found is that a lot of people can do work and can get work. However, their careers progresses really slowly for the first 3 years after diagnosis because people just basically just think that you can't do a job, even though everyone who applies to a job, they know that they can do it, especially with reasonable accommodations that are illegal not to provide. So this is like a whole other conversation. I made a Google form for people to fill out to just see what people who follow me think about this. Especially, I specifically asked people who have experience with this. Overall, there was only one person who said that they got more opportunities after their diagnosis. Everyone else said that they either had no change, and the biggest group of people said that they have started to get less opportunities. Now, based on the long form responses that people left, all of these people are capable of working. Some of them have an issue with not having enough sick days, for example, which is very much a problem that's even a problem for people who are able-bodied, let alone disabled people. Another thing that I noticed from those long form answers is that a lot of these people genuinely have no issues completing the work that they need to do as long as they are given reasonable accommodations. For example, being able to work from home a few days a week because of like the noise that's in the office and how much it affects you and other things like that. Now, another thing that I noticed is that something that I guess I did not know, and something that I did disclose in my applications to work, or just in general, I guess I don't really hide the fact that I had cancer, but there's a lot of people who in the forums said that it's kind of like a thing that we tell each other. By we, it's like people who are either experience sickness, people who are disabled or were disabled, whatever it is. They tell each other not to disclose it until you get the job. And then, even then, maybe think twice about disclosing it. Now, I am not here to tell you whether that is the way to go or not, because to be honest, it pisses me off that we are supposed to be acting like we are fucking criminals, like we did something, like we're supposed to hide the fact that something happened. No one goes out there and gets a disability on purpose. No one goes out there and on purpose gets fucking cancer. I don't know what to tell you. That's just not how it works. So it pisses me off that because of people's prejudice, we're supposed to be acting like we did something wrong. I'm actually more physically capable than all of those fuckers because I survived something this bad. Can any of them say that? Not really. So whenever people who have never had any trouble in their lives try to judge people who are dealing with some shit like that every single day, I'm just like, well, I didn't ask an opinion of a little bitch, which you are one of, so okay. Maybe it shouldn't be this rude. Anyway, about 60% of people who filled out the form said that they got less opportunities. The stats about adolescent and young adult survivors tell us that it is one of the groups that's the most high risk in terms of financial instability because of cancer and because of bills and other things like that. And usually young people are oftentimes uninsured. Thankfully, I'm in Canada, so I didn't have to pay for my treatment at least, but I still didn't have money to pay for rent and other things like that. So just imagine what kind of derailment this type of experience is financially for many people, right? We're kind of in a bit of a pickle right now. It's a really weird way to say that, but there has been a lot of research done recently into how many people are getting long COVID, and we are seeing that a lot of children are developing long COVID, which is not something that we are prepared for. And we need to start thinking about how we're going to approach this and how we're going to destigmatize different types of disabilities, illnesses, and other things like that, because we have a pretty high risk generation coming up, which is Gen Alpha. And we need to start thinking, first of all, we cannot be allowing greed to dictate our lives anymore, because the new generation is literally a lot sicker than the previous generations because of corporate greed, because of what food we're eating, because of how they handled the pandemic, that they just pushed everyone back out into the workplace regardless of how it affected anybody. The fact that children, because they were not quarantined properly, because people were acting like kids cannot have COVID or cannot have it as bad as adults, we have a bunch of children who are already exhibiting signs that they're going to develop early disability. So we have to be really thinking about what we're going to do with this and how we're going to approach this, because just in the past couple of weeks I had a few experiences that showed me that we are not prepared for everything that needs to be done for us to function properly. One of the examples of what happened was I applied to a gallery that, and just so you know, I have education and stuff like that in this particular department, so I'm literally applying for something that I am qualified for. I have the experience and everything. So I applied to a position at a gallery that boasts about them being very accessible. They constantly talk about accessibility, about quieter, less overstimulating exhibitions. You know, it's one of those galleries that consistently, you know, banks on at least pretending to be inclusive. We've taken this approach in terms of actual life things, like for example employment and the way that we do onboarding or do interviewing and stuff like that. We have taken it so far that people who consistently encourage and consistently talk about everyone applying, in terms of everyone as in like different types of races, different types of genders, sexual orientation, and especially disabilities, because they consistently talk about it. It was a very unique situation where I could actually see whether someone has opened my application, just opened. Okay, because I uploaded it to a platform that can show me whether there was a view, whether someone actually tried to even open the application, right? They haven't even opened it. And just based on my resume, I have all the requirements. So that begs a question. How do these people think that it is appropriate to ask someone to apply, encourage disabled people to apply, and then not even open the application? The worst part of it is that they're not only asking for resumes, they're asking for cover letters, right? Which is the norm now, to just like ask for the most amount of work without even actually opening the goddamn applications. What I'm thinking of when I'm looking at this is, thank God I have the energy now, right? Thank God I'm not as tired as I was after treatment, like right after treatment for like half a year or so. Thank God it's not the time where I'm going through treatment or before treatment. And thankfully I had the type of issue that is a temporary disability, not a permanent one. So I could apply, and it's not actually gonna take this much energy out of me to do this much work for a company that it's not even going to fucking open an application. It would be one thing if I wasn't qualified, but I am qualified and they don't do shit. The worst part about this is how much they talk about accessibility, how much they just constantly boast about it. They're like, oh, our curator, like the main director or whatever, is, they at least they insinuate, they describe her as also disabled. But I cannot imagine being someone who experienced disability. They claim that this is the current situation for her, some type of disability. I cannot imagine, as someone who experienced temporary disability, to be requesting to fill out applications, to send applications to this job with not only a resume, which would already make me feel uncomfortable. It would already make me feel uncomfortable if I'm not going to even consider people, and I'm gonna make my decision based on, I don't know, maybe nepotism, maybe whatever it is, you know, because clearly it's not about being qualified, because otherwise at least my cover letter would have been open, right? I cannot imagine to require not only a resume but also a cover letter specifically written for a position at their gallery, right? Request someone to do this work, which would take at least half an hour to an hour to write a proper application that actually is trying, that's specifically tailored for this job, and then not even open it. I cannot fathom it. To request that amount of work from somebody who because again, you're encouraging people with disabilities to apply. You have to understand that there's going to be at least a couple who are disabled who are going to apply. And if you actually knew what it's like to try and spend your energy in the most efficient way possible every single day so your disability doesn't interfere with your ability to participate in life, I know for a fact that none of them would feel comfortable doing that. I just don't know how that, they can. It's just again, I don't want to speculate whether she is actually experiencing a disability or not, but it's just crazy to me that it's either she has a lack of empathy for anybody, even people who are similar to her, or she just hasn't actually experienced anything that interferes with your life. I don't know what it is, but the lack of just comprehension of what you're asking from people and the expectations, it's crazy. It's crazy. I genuinely I don't think I have the patience anymore, honestly, to cut slack, to really assume that maybe they were trying to come from a good place, because this is something that I keep on noticing. And just because I got lucky enough to get back to my previous life does not mean that I can just close my eyes on these things, okay? It's just bothering me so much now because I have experienced it. It's not like a distant thing that sometimes that doesn't get explained, because I feel like it's not something that gets talked about a lot, okay? It gets talked about in very, very surface level terms, and that's what's pissing me off. It's kind of like exactly the same. Our society is basically operating the same way as that gallery is. They are saying that they're open to everyone applying, for example, that they will accommodate or whatever. They might accommodate for you to be able to send in your application, but then they won't fucking open the application. Do you know what I mean? They basically don't have this base level of just respect for human life, and I just cannot, with all these corporations, with all this, this is not even a corporation. This is I think it's a artist ran. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember. I need to check. But it's a small gallery anyway. It's not a corporation. Yet they still lack understanding. Instead of trying to aim for real inclusion where you understand that what you're asking from people, not everyone can be putting in this type of work for free, for not even getting a chance. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like a very fake, saccharine kind of approach where you say, we just want to make sure, we just want to take a moment. It's kind of the same as when they acknowledge that we're on the unceded lands or something like that, but they don't actually want to do anything that would actually give all the wealth that they sucked out for centuries back. You know what I mean? What are you doing? Why are you just saying a bunch of bullshit? Do you always speak like that? Do you always just say whatever nonsense comes to your mind without even giving it a second thought? I personally know that, for example, there was a job that I was supposed to get before I had to turn it down because I got diagnosed. It was a video producer position. Their expectation, because of our interviews and everything, I was supposed to be already starting soon. They were telling me that there is a whole team of people working on one video, for example, and we have to finish it within 2 weeks, and that video is only 3 minutes long. We have a studio, we have editors, we have everything. I was shocked that I have to put all of this together myself, for example, right? The research, the filming, editing, everything, and I have to do it every single week. That job, I would be making a crazy amount of money a year just to be a part of the team doing basically doing 10% of what I do here on my channel, but actually having being paid for it. And the fact that those jobs are now thinking that I am incapable of doing something because I went through chemo or something is absolutely ridiculous. It's genuinely laughable. The thought process that those people have, it's really irrational, and it is absolutely ridiculous, and it only makes sense when you remember that we built the entirety of our society based on insane gluttonous greed of like a few guys at the top who think that the same guys who thought that slavery wasn't a bad thing. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, like it's impossible to be talking about accessibility without straight up criticizing the way that we've built everything, without straight up criticizing capitalism, without straight up criticizing and calling out colonization and imperialism. There's no fucking way. I'm sorry. There isn't one. If you logically follow the thought through all the way down to its root, it's impossible to have this conversation and actually find solutions without pointing out what the core of the problem is. Anyway, I would love to talk about the disengagement of social services and government assistance and the lived experience of sick people, the bureaucracy basically killing people and stuff like that. I want to talk about all of that, and I actually want to change things now when it comes to Canadian health system. We should change it everywhere, to be fucking honest, but I just know what is the healthcare system here, so that's why I can criticize it, right? I would love to talk about that, but that's a separate conversation because I actually want to find people through my platform who can help me understand the way that it functions better if you work in this departments, you know, and how we can change it without voting it in over the period of 10 years or whatever the fuck. We need to do it now, and we need to get it now, like immediately. I don't think that we should be waiting for fucking hundreds of years, hundreds and thousands of people dying because of neglect from our system just to maybe get a chance to get it voted in, you know? But we're gonna talk about it separately. I actually wanted to do a whole project. I wanted to do kind of like a film type of performance type of thing that would be engaging, and we would be able to talk about my experience and just my thoughts on mortality in general, not just cancer, but existentialism in a way, but more like humorous and life affirming. I wanted to do all of that and then kind of tie it to being kind of like a bad signal for all the people who are working social services or who are in government, in BC cancer and other things like that, where we can connect and actually make change quickly. I'm not interested in doing it the slow way because it's not fair. It's not fair that so many people are going to suffer just because we can't get it right, even though we know better. We already know better, and we yet to change anything. I'm going to try and figure out how I'm going to be able to do it to kind of make it less of a speaking at the camera and that's it kind of video, because I want to get more traction on it. But let's keep this conversation going. If we're going to find another avenue to talk about it where I can kind of make it accessible to people later on, we should do that. I'm glad that you guys have shared. It was quite informative. It was really interesting to see what kind of information was already out there, that you guys know a lot about what you shouldn't do in interviews and whatever, that I was doing completely without even a second thought, because I never thought of beating cancer as something to be ashamed of, and I'm not going to do it now. I don't give a fuck if that's not gonna get me a job. If that's the case, then fucking be it. I'm so tired of this world and I'm not going to bend to it. Not something I'm interested in at all. Yeah, this has been Gloss Over 2. I hope you're having a great day. Don't be too down about this. We've got a lot of shit to worry about in this world, and being down about issues is something like that's your prerogative to feel it, but just know that there's many of us out there who will not let it slide. Okay, so don't worry about it. We will figure it out. If you are bummed out a little bit because of this video, go watch the previous video, because that's what I'm doing here. Doing one video where I'm talking about something that bothers me a lot, that I'm passionate about, and then I do another video that's silly, a reaction with my assistant. So go check that out. Go get a giggle, because we all deserve a good life. We all deserve to enjoy it from time to time, bitch. Thank you for watching. I hope you're having a good day, and I will see you soon with another one. Bye.